Blog Talk Radio.
Greetings. This is just doing a special short version of the cows. Wanted to speak with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. about homosexual activity. I was able to speak with him privately last week, and he shared some really interesting thoughts, and I wanted him to share that with you all briefly. I didn't want to take up too much of his time. Mr. Fuller, when I spoke with you, you said that white people tend to think of non-white people as boys and girls, and you tied that into how that relates to homosexual behavior. Could you share that with our audience so they can get a really clear picture of what you're saying?
Well, there is a system of white supremacy in place, which just means just mistreatment and domination and use of people in a royalist manner based on color. That's basically what it is. That's what racism is. It's just a variation of of royalism, but it's based on color rather than on other things like lineage and who your father was and what your name was. 1,000 years ago, and certain sets of traditions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what basically racism is, and it's turned out to be the most powerful form of royalism in the known universe now, in the form of what we call racism and or white supremacy. Now, in any structure that's dominant, you have to dominate the people in all areas of activity. If you don't dominate them in all areas of activity, then other areas of activity will slip away from the domination factor. And you have 9 areas, according to what I have written, that would just about cover most things. I think that's adequate enough. Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Now, I call sex the 8th area of activity in alphabetical order of the other areas of activity. So that just comes up as number 8. But sex is the most powerful motivating force among people, next to the system of white supremacy itself. Because whatever the dominant system is, that's what people react to on the planet. So the dominant system at this particular time in history, and has been as far back as anybody can remember who's breathing now, the dominant system. That's mistreatment of people based on color, domination of people based on color. So the sexual aspect is the second most powerful motivating force, rather than the first, under this system, since the racist factor is the dominant motivating force among people, and sexual motivations are the second. Now, the racists, apparently, according to the evidence, have studied how people who are subject to them are motivated sexually. Now, if a male is a boy, which you are a boy, you're a little boy when you're born and whatnot, and you get to be a bigger boy and whatnot, and at a certain point you reach what they call a certain degree of maturity, which is decided according to the social system that you have at hand. You're now entering the threshold of what they call manhood. So you go from boys to men. Females go from girls to women. And that's the normal process in most societies. So what the racists did was look at that and said, well, when you have a system of racism, you only have one man and one woman category, and that would be the masters themselves. You can't have your victims of the system growing into manhood and womanhood. So if they start trying to be men, if they go from boys to men, now you have a problem. You have a bigger problem than you had before. When they were boys, they were completely dependent on you. They understood that they'll do your bidding, and they're easier to control. Same way with the girls who are trying to be women. But when they start thinking that they are men, you're not going to have but one man in the house of white supremacy, and he's got to be white. And you're not going to have but one woman, and she has to be white. So now it defies logic that you would allow them to go from boys to men. So if you're not going to allow them to go from boys to men, what will you allow them to do? Because they are constantly growing, they're constantly getting smarter, and they have a natural tendency to want to break away from boyhood and to become men. So what you do is divert them away from wanting to become men and have, if it's a male, have him go from boyhood to femalehood. In other words, he changes his gender altogether, at least in his mind. Then he's easier to control. Then you do the same thing with the female. Take the black female, and rather than allow her to go the normal progression of things, steer her in the direction away from becoming a woman and in the direction of becoming a male. In other words, she will switch genders in her mind. Now, her body didn't switch genders, but we can probably do some things that give her the illusion that her body can be made to switch genders too. Now, when you do that, what you have is confusion. You have added confusion. And one of the best ways to control people for a long period of time, particularly if you confuse them sexually, is through confusing them sexually, so that you have a male thinking he's a female or wanting to be a female, even if he's struggling and trying and whatnot and trying to do everything that a female does, but he doesn't have the physical equipment. But he's got it in his mind anyway. He's just determined that he's going to act like one and be one and do the things that females do, and look at males like a female looks at males normally. And then over in the female column, have the female do the same thing. Only thing about it, she's not going to try to grow into womanhood. She's going to try to do everything that she sees males doing, including in the bedroom. Try to become an artificial male. And she can do this in her mind because the mind is very flexible. A person can actually think that they are a bird if they want to. But before they try to fly or jump off a building, it's best that they get the equipment for doing so. So that's the way that works. And when you can get people on that role, and when you have people subject to you, you can always propagandize anything. You can make anything look like it's the fashion because you set the rules for the society. So that's what's going on. I tried to be as comprehensive as I possibly could in that description, and I hope that people could understand what was being said.
Yes, sir.
So that's what we have now. We're heading in that direction now, full steam ahead.
And when I spoke with you, I said that, the counter-argument that I frequently hear is that, well, there are a lot of white people who are also participating in so-called homosexual activity, and, this is not something where they're just trying to trick black people into doing it. You have people who are born so-called gay or homosexual, and, this is no trick at all. If it was, you wouldn't see all these white people going around and doing it and being mistreated because they are participating in these so-called homosexual acts. What would your view on that be?
Depends on how it plays out in the end. Now, if the system of white supremacy remains intact, then that will prove the supposition just outlined. That will prove that it's valid, that it is designed basically to support what is already in place. Otherwise, you would have the system of white supremacy would go out of business. There would be no reason to keep it in business if the white people were serious about really getting rid of racism and getting rid of what they call all of the sexual and gender categories and all like that, because racism is an artificial category. See, just because people are of different colors doesn't say that they are members of a race. That's an artificial construct. No one is supposed to be a member of a race. That's something completely made up. So if you can do the same thing with gender, you can do the same thing with a lot of things, but you have to wait until it reaches a certain point where you got enough evidence to prove the proposition that you made in the first place. Now, like I say, this is my concept of the way things are going, because there is still a system of racism in place. Now, if racism is still in place, when all of the so-called anti-sexual, that's what I call it, behavior comes to full fruition, and everybody's accepting of it, everybody's participating in it, or embracing it, or parading it around and saying that it's the best thing ever discovered since ever, okay? Now, and you still have a system of racism in place, then that will have proved the supposition, because ordinarily all of racism would disappear. But see, it's designed to lure. Now, here's where I base that on, the luring part. In the history of the system of white supremacy, there's a thing called whiskey. It was very popular, the use of it. Now, if you are a practiced deceiver, one thing that you know about the science and the art of deception, you cannot deceive people into doing things unless you are doing quite a bit of it yourself. If you're going to be what you call a real arch deceiver, and the white supremacists have proven that they are arch deceivers. They are very skillful at deception. So in order to deceive people, you can't get people to drink whiskey, and you're sitting there never drinking any of it yourself. So there's some historical record of this. So what they'll do, a deceiver will sit there and practice drinking whiskey under controlled conditions. You know, take a little sip, know exactly where the point is where you get good and drunk, or where you don't get good and drunk. Then once you learn what they say, and some people brag about it in bars and whatnot, said, hey, I can drink you under the table, meaning they can outdrink you, that you will drink. I mean, that they will drink, and you will drink. But when they drink, they don't get drunk. But you wind up drunk. Many males who have tried to deceive females into sexual activity, you know, back in the days when whiskey was a bigger thing than dope, used to get into the booth in the restaurant and start that process. Say, now what I'll do, I'll know she's not willing really, but she'll be willing before the night's over, because I'm going to get her to drink some of this stuff that I brought with me. And he'll be drinking and she'll be drinking. He'll take a sip, she'll take a sip. Next thing you know, she's willing to go along with anything. She doesn't know what she's doing, but he does. Now, many a person, particularly pimps, understand that thing very well. Now, it's the same way with whiskey as it was used, according to the record of white supremacists themselves, in dealing with people who are called Indians. Sit down, Chief. We're going to have a Thanksgiving Day. We're going to give thanks for all of the wonderful things that have been done for both me and you by our Maker, by the great spirits. And in fact, I brought some spirits with me. It's in a bottle. You never had anything like this before, but you will want it after you get it. It's called firewater. It's full of spirits. It'll give you spirit like you have never had before, Chief. And the chief said, well, what's wrong with just pure water from the river, from the great streams of our lands? Say, oh, yeah, but you never had nothing like this. This is something we made in a factory. It's got water in it. No mistake about that. Well, we got a little alcohol and a few other stuff, little other stuff that I've added here. It'll pep you up, give you another perspective on looking at the mountains altogether. Might be good stuff. So he gives it to the chief. And at the same time now, the chief is a little suspicious. So he's drinking right along with the chief. So that means everything must be okay. So he's drinking, I'm drinking. Next thing you know, the chief is under the table. Chief's not used to it. And the white supremacist, while he's drunk, or when he begins to come out of the stupor, says, okay, Chief, I got some paper here I want you to sign. I'm going to give you $22 for Manhattan. Now, when the chief really gets sober, see, now he's angry. He wants to go on the warpath. but he's already signed everything away. And what was the instrument for doing it? Deception through an act of using whiskey. Now, the whiskey, that's working all over the world, and they're starting to do it in South Africa, in Thailand, and other places and whatnot, is sex and anti-sex. Oh, you don't need to be a female all the time. After all, females have to go through a lot of agony. Wouldn't you like to be like your brother? Well, I don't have the equipment of my brother. Oh, well, you can pretend that you have it. I got some stuff I can sell you in the store. Strap-ons, you name it. And you just get it in your head that you should be a male. Because males can get things done. They got privileges that females don't have. And you say, well, I don't particularly, the lady says, I don't particularly want to be a male and all like that. Well, there's something, have you tried it? You don't know it. Don't knock it if you ain't tried it. And knowing black people, particularly in this area of the world, we like anything that looks like it's bordering on something new, because we're so tired of everything that ain't new. And they won't know we'll go for it. We'll pioneer, we'll lead the parade, which is what they try to get us to do. Now, you can't get a decent place to stay. You can't get a decent job. But if you want to lead the gay parade and you're black, they will reserve a spot for you. If you don't believe it, try it. That's what I mean by evidence of what I'm talking about. The record shows this. And they start with who? The youngest. Okay, always work with them in the choir and churches and whatnot. And they do it through the most intelligent of black people. They don't start with the fellow sitting there with the wine bottle in front of the liquor store who's 40 years old. Because he's a black male. That's why he's drinking. He's been disallowed to ever be a man, and he knows he'll never be one. He'll always be a boy. And that is tearing him up inside. That's why he left his wife, left his children, and all like that. I mean, he gave up on everything and started drinking. That's why he's sitting on the curb out there. Because he's still struggling to be a man, and he will fight people right there in that parking lot about his manhood. So you can't hardly get to him, even when he's drunk. You say, oh, man, get away from me. Don't be feeling on me. I got this big-hip woman out here, this big-leg woman out here, if I want to do something like that, that's who I'm going to get with. I don't want you. Get your old rough, dirty hands off of me, Man, I like women, I'm a man, I'm a man. Look at me, I'm a man, I don't want no man. Even when I was in the joint, I didn't want one. See, that's the way he'll talk. He's 40 years old, okay? So what do? They go around and get the teachers and the guys who are going into the ministry, and that's where they spread that gospel among black intellectuals. Because the street dude, see, he's still struggling. I mean, he ain't going to never make it, because you can't be a man under the system of white supremacy. You got to remain a boy or turn into a female. By turning into a female, I mean having the kind of ideas about the opposite sex that a female has, but you're a male. But you got the same idea about a male as your sister has. You're trying to outdo her. You're trying to take your sister's boyfriend. That's the way the white supremacists want it.
My co-host, I believe is here. She is a non-white female, and she is 10 years old, but she has been studying your work, and she understands that there is a system of racism, white supremacy. I was hoping she could ask some questions as well. Are you there, Justice?
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Did you... Sorry about the misunderstanding.
No
did
problem.
you... Okay.
Do you have some questions you would like to ask Mr. Fuller?
Not at this moment.
Okay. I will,
Well, she can think about what I said. See, here again, codification is about not taking Neely Fuller's word for anything.
Mm.
In fact, you're not supposed to. You're supposed to just walk around and take a look. So you just don't jump into things. Just walk around and take a look and see if it doesn't start adding up. Because that's what I do. I don't jump to a conclusion and then go around trying to bombard people with the conclusion I jump to.
Mm.
I just go around and see if there's evidence of what I think might be happening.
Mm.
In fact, I challenge, you might say, if you want to use that term, I say questioning, it's not a challenge. If I have a concept, I'll go around and question the concept that I have before I even reveal it. And see, well, something is going on. Now, why is this happening? Why here? Why now? How come it wasn't happening, 60 years ago?
Mm.
Why is it happening now? And why is it happening involving black people on this scale?
Mm.
See what I mean? And I'm saying now, someone must have thought it up, or it wouldn't be happening, because it's something that's happening between people.
Mm.
And anything that black people do, the white supremacists always have something to do with it.
Mm.
Otherwise, it's not going to be happening in the first place. If it's something that's bad for their business, they will cut it off. They'll put a stop to it. But if it's something that they think is good for their business, they'll not only let it roll, they will support it.
Mm.
Now, I've heard white supremacists argue about white people engaging in what we call homosexuality or gayism or lesbianism and whatnot. And that's another thing, even the terms don't add up. Because I've even asked the questions, which is what you do in any kind of research. Why are gay people called gay? Nobody answers that. Is it named after a person? Mr., Frank Joshua J. Gay or what, who started it, or who promoted it, who had an organization by that name and it was named after him? I can see that. But it's just, all of a sudden, gay. What does that mean? And then you say gays and lesbians. Then you add another one, transgender. Gays, it started off just being gays, then lesbians, then transgender. So one legitimate question is, where's the cutoff point?
Mm.
See what I mean? And another thing, is a lesbian gay? Why do you say gays and lesbians? I mean, these are just questions, logical questions.
Right.
If you got a big sign out and you're carrying it around and telling everybody to join in and support it and contribute some money to it and all like that, people should know what they're contributing money to.
Mm.
And another thing, where is the payoff? Now, if it's an improvement over what we call traditional sex, because they call it alternative, that's another term. This is a alternative, meaning something that's different from the usual or something that's a variation of the basic. Well, then you ask several questions there. Well, is there anything incorrect about the basic? And a person might say no, but this is an alternative, of course, for people who just got tired of the basics, want to do something different. What's wrong with variety? What's wrong with diversity, diverting from one thing to another? Well, maybe nothing, but let's examine it. Examine it for what? To see if it is an improvement over what you already had. And if so, justify it by showing, by example, where's the improvement, which one of these, see, when you start talking about homosexuality or lesbianism, these are not just abstract words. These are talking about you have to do certain things to qualify. So what are these things that you do? And which one of them is an improvement over what has been done? That's just like a person might come around and say, well, hey, I used to kind of be attracted to people, I've had several wives and all like that. Even had a little incest, every now and then, And, but I finally came to the conclusion that people ain't where it's at all. I'm in the bear. You say, what do you mean you in the bear? I'm into bear. I go out in the woods and I chase me down a bear. The bear ain't chasing me no more. I'm chasing them. I have found that that's a wonderful alternative. After all, man, let's face it. Look at these marriages and divorces and whatnot. I don't have no trouble with the bears. I used to didn't think of anything about bears except just going to the ball game, But I found out that, man, if you really snuggle up to a bear, you'll never want to go back doing nothing else. Now, where'd you get that idea? Well, it just came to me one night. Tired of these women. In fact, people was telling me, well, if you don't like women, get you a man. Well, I'm tired of them, too. So I'm in the bear. See, now, you might laugh, but it's going to come to that, if it ain't already. Because there are some people into that. Yeah, they call it, what do they call it, bestiality?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, see, that might be a wholesale thing. In about another 10 years, they say, well, hey, this gay and lesbian thing about played out, man, ain't where it's at. Man, everybody's trying to preserve the bears now. I'm trying to get me a panda. Now, what is the point that I'm making? It's lots of things that the mind can do. The mind is extremely inventive and extremely flexible. But the basic question is this type of activity an improvement, and if so, why? Otherwise, why are you coming around asking black people who don't even have a roof over their head that this is what they should be pushing now? They don't even have a decent school or a decent job. But now you want them to join the gay rights movement, and that should be their priority. We should drop everything else and make that a priority. I don't see the justification at all. They have some white people who came around years ago and started calling it the rainbow. Kind of, you might excuse the pun, tailgating Jesse Jackson's rainbow push for civil rights. And then they got to saying, well, what is this all about? And when the question was asked, they answered by saying, well, it's another division of civil rights.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all the same thing. Discriminating against gays is the same as discriminating against blacks. And a lot of black people say, wait a minute, it may sound like the same thing, but it ain't the same thing. But they were able to shout all of that down. It is the same thing. Why is it the same thing? Because I said so. White supremacy in action again. Always, because I said so. See, but that don't, it sounds like it could be right, but it's something that still don't add up. It ain't the same thing. It is the same thing. Trust me. No different. Discrimination is discrimination, which is another word that people should pay attention to. Everybody discriminates every day. You discriminate when you decide to ride the bicycle to work rather than catch the bus. Now, does that say that you are discriminating against the bus riders? So that word discrimination, I don't even use it because everybody discriminates. It just means choosing. But what is the key? The key is it a choice that's constructive? When you start talking about black people's plight now, see, that's a different thing altogether. Is it constructive or is it non-constructive? Because it's got to be one or the other. Is it an improvement? Now, we already have a mess with the male-female thing, but you would have that anyway under any system that's unjust. But now, are you making a bigger mess, or are you straightening out all the mess that ever was? I have no reason to believe that this is helping to straighten out anything. It's helping to make it worse, particularly when you start doing it right down to the grade school level. start saying that this is something that this is just what you children need. You're 7 years old, and this is what I need? I don't even know what sex is yet. Now you're telling me about alternatives to sex. Well, let's start out so that your mind will get straight. Now, Jane has 2 mommies, thinking about getting 3. Now, what benefit is this to Jane? Well, she learns diversity at an early age, diverting from what to what in order to do what. Oh, well, we'll know when we get there. Don't ask so many questions. Oh, no. I got a lot of questions. Show me how this is a what? Improvement. Which one of these acts? See? Well, being gay. Don't you understand what being gay used to mean? Being happy. I mean, but that ain't what it means, I don't think, when you say it. So you're talking about acts. Show me by demonstration the very act that you're talking about that's going to be an improvement. And then tell me in words how this is a great improvement. Tell me, First, do the act with me looking at you, and then after you finish the act, you'll say, now that's act 1 of being gay. You ain't gay unless you do this. See, there's several things you can do to qualify for being gay. So you got to have qualifications. Otherwise, what's the difference between you and everybody else? If you don't do something different. So you got to do something. So whatever that difference is, you do it. Then you get come to the blackboard with the pointer and whatnot, and you say, now, number 1, this is an improvement over whatever it is you all are doing out there. It's not just an alternative. And I'm telling you this because you should be on board for supporting act number 1, which I just demonstrated to you. This is what you actually ask people to do. See, in other words, stop just talking in circles and whatnot and talking in innuendo. Get the crowd there to come and take their seats respectfully, and then march down the aisle and come up to the podium and have your bed up there or whatever it is you're supposed to have, and do what it is that you say that everybody should be taking an interest in and supporting. And then as you do it, you can turn around and face the crowd every now and then. Just take a little break. Say, now, you saw what we just did. Now, this is an improvement over what has been because of, and then enumerate the improvements and ask for questions and answers. Because if I'm in the audience, I'm going to say, now, how is that an improvement? I just saw what you did from start to finish. I sat here and watched it for 15 minutes until you completed it. Didn't say a word. Now, I want you to tell me how that's an improvement over what? I think that what I'll hear is silence. But I don't know. See, because they never get that far. They just go around and say, support us. And if you don't support us, oh, you're some kind of demon. You're some kind of anti-something. No, just explain what you're doing. I mean, like the chief. I don't know about that fire water. How is that going to improve me? How is that going to be an improvement over water? Say, well, didn't you get a little buzz when you, yeah, I got the little buzz and all like that, but is it an improvement? Say, well, didn't the mountains look like you saw 2 of them instead of 1? Wouldn't you like to have an extra mountain? Well, an extra mountain might help, but that's not really what I was looking at. I thought I was. Well, Chief, that's what whiskey does. It makes you drunk. Well, is being drunk an improvement over being sober? Well, if you work at it, see how they talk? And they do the same thing with sex.
Again,
No,
Mr.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sorry. Yeah,
Right.
I was going to see if Justice, if she had any questions she would like to ask Mr. Fuller.
Okay.
Justice, are you there?
Hello?
Okay, we can hear you. Yes, ma'am.
I don't have any questions right now.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's why I'm saying, see, you know, if they don't have any questions, there's no problem there. All I want them to do, I have said what I had to say. I just want them to think about it. After they think about it and think about it thoroughly, they may come to the conclusion that nothing that I said made sense, in which case they can go ahead with whatever they think is they hear somebody else say. But I think that anything, particularly something that's supposed to be new or you're expanding on something that's old, should be examined. You know, somebody comes to me and says, you know, Fuller, you need to quit this job. I mean, it's a better job over there in that other town and whatnot. Now, I'm willing to listen, but we're going to have to take a weekend and go over there and have me take a look at that job. See what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I ain't going to just, you know, just sign off and whatnot. I mean, go in there and cuss the boss out and quit, and then go running off to the other job. I mean, when I haven't even looked into it, I'm just asking people to take a look and see where all this goes. And when I say take a look, I don't mean just a short look, because this is pretty big stuff. You take a good long look before you go plunging in, okay? You know, because there's an old saying, if you snore in a bear's face long enough, you'll learn to like it. But bear might not be where it's at, you know. You might get to the place where you can't bear it. But it'll be too late. Because now you're hooked. Just like the chief got hooked on that whiskey. Ask any Indian about whiskey. And ask is whiskey a friend to the Indian? But when they first got it, it looked like it was a friend. He no longer felt the cold. I laid out in the snow all night last night, you know. Maybe the white man got it right. I didn't feel nothing. I woke up with a smile on my face, and I wanted some more, you know. It destroyed him. This thing that the white supremacists are doing with sexuality and bringing it to black people, beware.
I agree wholeheartedly. I especially started paying attention to that when I was seeing so many different black so-called stars, black people who have a lot of money, are well-known.
Oh, yeah, those are the ones you get first. Yeah, and then have them finance what you're doing to them.
Yes,
you know?
Sir.
You know.
I have noted the white people who allege to be against racism, white supremacy, so-called anti-racist, a lot of them, they will talk about what they call white privilege, and then with that, they will talk about people who are not gay, that they're also privileged, and that you have mistreatment of people because they are a person of color, and then you have mistreatment of people who do not engage in heterosexual behavior. And how do you feel that plays into the system of white supremacy?
Well, for one thing, they'll take antidotes. That's one thing they'll always do. You can always find an antidote. In other words, an example. Some black person who is so-called gay or homosexual, lesbian, whatever it is, gets beat up, maybe gets killed. Okay? Many people get killed every day for something or another. But the way you looked at me, I mean, you know, so I'm going to kill you. People get killed about that. Okay? So you can always find an example. But what they'll do, they'll just sit back and wait for someone to pick out somebody who's homosexual and beat them up because they are homosexual. Okay? Well, basically, these are people that go around and beat up people, period. You know, they don't need much excuse. They're just looking for somebody to beat up. All right? See, so that's not unusual. But here's how shrewd the so-called white supremacist arm of the gay rights movement is. They know that's going to happen. And then when it does happen, they'll say, see, that doesn't happen all day, every day. In fact, where it comes to black people, most black people, has been my experience, coming up in the South, the black male, and I knew some of them, the white supremacists would find out that this black male is a homosexual, that's who he'd hire. The black male who is looking at females, when he comes over there to get hired at the white hotel, no, we don't want you around here. Absolutely not. But we'll take this black male here who likes for people to take him into the men's room, other males, we'll put him behind the desk, you know, and give him a promotion and everything. And other white people will come in there and say, what is that Negro doing behind that desk and whatnot? I thought this was a white hotel and whatnot. Yeah, but check him out. He's no danger. He's a plaything. He's all fun and games because he doesn't want to be a man. So you got no threat, ever, to him. He's no problem. And I have seen that over and over again. Because I used to wonder about some guys being able to get jobs where they're not even supposed to be. The old jobs, I mean, you know, where, hey, you know, some white guys couldn't get the job. But he got a black elevator operator over in that building. Yeah, because you see, you got white men who are servicing. You know, he's giving service to. That's just another branch of the service. Okay? Now, the black guy who comes in there looking at the white women, see, I mean, hey, yeah, if he's lucky, I mean, you know, in the first place, he ain't going to get the job. And sometimes if he does, he might wind up swinging from a tree. Okay? So then that told me something. I mean, that was before I got out of my teens, I started learning that. There are some black males who wasn't even homosexuals, but they acted effeminate. And they were accepted by white people. They could sit there, you know, sit around the table and whatnot, as long as they were talking girl talk and whatnot, talking about how you fix your hair and all this type of stuff. Hey, they're all right. And you can notice that today.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. The black male in the office, I mean, who kind of tips around and you know, he might not even be a homosexual, but he has what most people would call feminine ways. You know, I mean, obvious feminine ways. Not all people who believe in homosexuality have obvious feminine ways, but some people who are not even homosexual, you know, on the surface, they have high-pitched voices. They don't have that deep voice like some black people have, all right? But they talk, you know, in a real high-pitched voice, you know, and they're always smiling and always tipping, you know, and switching. They switch more than the females, okay, when they walk. Very acceptable, you know. I just give an example. I mean, you know, he talks like, you know, have you all been to coffee? You know, stretch out that last word. Coffee? You know, coffee anyone? You know, a male who talks like that? Oh, yeah. See, white people notice him. They pay attention to him. They know he's black. They see he's black. Hey, but hey, you know, he's okay. He ain't no danger. He's a little cutesy plaything.
Definitely not a man.
Right. He ain't trying to be no man, so he ain't no threat to nothing. You know, he's no danger to the system of white supremacy. That's the bottom line. Back in the ancient days, what they used to do to make sure, they'd make eunuchs out of them, meaning they'd castrate them. Then they'd dress them up in a big gold suit, put a big turban on their head, and they'd stand them outside of what they call the harem, or the concubine room of whoever the ruler was. And he was the guard. See, they'd let him mingle with the girls in there all the time. I mean, he'd be the only male in there. I mean, what had been a male, but he's castrated. He got no equipment at all. But he got big, strong shoulders. He can whip anybody, you know. And his job is to keep other males from coming in there. Black as he can be. got a big gold turban on, big expensive, got plenty of bling-bling. Boy, they put bling-bling all over him. I mean, he's a walking showpiece. Got some gold shoes turned up at the end. Very big red sash around his waist. That's his full-time job, stopping people at the door. What are you doing in here? You don't have no business in here. There's naked women in here. They all belong to the king. They belong to the emperor. My job is to keep you out of here. Get on away from here. Well, I slash you with this sword, you know. But he's got no sex organs. They call him eunuchs. The palace eunuch. Now, that's actual history.
I wanted to ask you, excuse me, we're going to have a white person come on the program later today. She's a professor at the University of Southern California. She wrote a book on white supremacy. It's called What Blood Won't Tell. And she basically, she analyzes how the white people who practice racism, how they have changed the rules about who gets to be a white person, and even what rules they're going by, that they've changed those. And one of the things that she highlights is that to be a white person, you are expected to be informed about racism. You are expected to know the rules of how you are supposed to function as it relates to other white people and non-white people, that is just expected of you. You cannot be ignorant of those rules. I had heard you say that white people, you cannot be ignorant about racism. And if you are, you will get in trouble with other white people. Could you share your view on that?
The average white person, about the time they're 16 years old, they know all the rules. They picked it up by osmosis, meaning just by being around people and observing and listening and whatnot, being around the dinner table and all like that when political talk is going on. You know, the little white girl, the little white boy who's sitting there, I mean, he's 6 years old, but he hears, you know, his white grandfather sitting up there talking about that blankety-blank Obama and whatnot, and all the rest of those heathen niggas are ruining, you know, the society and all like that, and on and on and on. Now, he's 6 years old. About the time he's 15, he's well-schooled, and he hasn't said a word to anybody. He's, you know, by the time he gets ready to go to school, he knows the fundamentals, and by the time he gets to about the 8th or 9th grade, he's got it just about pat. Now, every now and then he'll make some mistakes. You know, he'll choose a white buddy or something a black buddy or something like that. I mean, he'll be on the football team and all like that. But for the most part, he knows the rules. He knows where the line is. And he's not supposed to cross it, because when he does, he'll be crossing his grandfather, who's still sitting on that porch rocking back and forth. You know. Now, boy, you know better than that. It's okay, you be nice and kind to the people. Don't call them names and all like that. But after all, don't forget, you're a white man now. You got to remember that. That means something. I didn't go all the way through the wars and all like that fighting for you to wind up being like them. It's all right for you to be around them and do a little laughing and talking and all like that, but you're a different species altogether, and don't you forget it. How do you think that we got all that we got? By being like them? Look at them. Look at them. Drive through where they live. Look at the way they act. Do you think that's an improvement? You know? And so, you know, they stand there and look, and then they go out and check it out. And they say, no, you know, I'd rather, hey, there's something to being white. You get a lot of things out of being white that you won't get if you're black.
For sure.
Yeah, see, so they see that. I mean, they ain't blind, you know. Are you in a better position being white, or are you in a better position being black? Anywhere in the world. And every white person is, you know, a 30-year-old white person, they don't know that. I mean, you know, even if they are blind, they know that much. I mean, a blind white person. Doesn't even know what a black person looks like. If somebody's told him he's white, he knows what that means. That's a much better position.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because he's listening. He got ears.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had one person that called in. I want to see if they had any questions. Before I do, I want to check Justice. Do you have any questions you would like to ask Mr. Fuller? Are you there, Justice? We didn't lose her. If you're there, you
Hello?
Putting everybody to sleep.
Hello?
I don't think so. They're listening in the chat. We can hear you, Justice. Go ahead if you have a question that you would like to ask.
Yes. How can the system of white supremacy be stopped?
First of all, by having the thing, that's why I call what I write the compensatory code. Compensatory means making up for what's missing. And you assume that what's missing is something that should be, other than something that what you have. What you have is a system of racism. Now, what's the best system for replacing the system of racism? Well, you look at what racism does. It's a form of injustice. So you do just the opposite. Try to come up with a system that's a system of justice, meaning what? Guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. It's a very simple, fundamental thing, and that's all you have to remember. And then everything that you do, each and every day, wherever you are, you try to do the best you can to fulfill those guarantees. The person who is being mistreated doesn't get mistreated. If you see it, you speak up. First of all, by asking a question. Is this person being mistreated? And if so, how? Because it appears that the person is being mistreated. And if not, why not? You know, because you're looking at what's happening. And you just raise a question to the people who are around, who are causing what you perceive to be the mistreatment. And in order to minimize conflict and get into a big fight with them, you just say, is this the way a person is supposed to be treated? And then let them answer. Is this what I'm looking at? Is this the way that a person is supposed to be treated? And let the person who you perceive to be doing the mistreatment answer. And if the person says yes, then you say, why? If this is the way a person is supposed to be treated, why? What's the reason? And last but not least, is this the way you want to be treated? The way that you are treating this person right now, do you want to be treated this way? Do you want everybody in this room to start treating you the same way? And everybody in every other room, everywhere you go, for the rest of your life? See what I mean? Hold the phone a minute.
Yes, sir. It's just a spontaneous episode of Context of White Supremacy. I had the ability to contact Mr. Fuller and decided to do so. Justice was able to join in. This is, I guess, the warm-up for our show at 7 p.m. today, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Are you with us again, Mr. Fuller? Oh, I guess he's still gone, yeah. This is the warm-up show for our
now,
show
the other
today.
part of that, Justice, hello, I broke into your conversation.
Go right ahead, sir.
So the other part of that is you have to guarantee that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. That's the compensatory definition. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
That's the compensatory definition for justice, which loosely means balance between people. People are out of balance all over this planet, 24/7. Why? Mostly because of mistreatment, and the biggest form of mistreatment is racism, because there's more conflict between white and non-white than any other type of conflicts including so-called religious conflicts, that there are. This is why racism is so deadly. It's the major form of conflict. It's the one that most people do the most hand-wringing about. Just like the lady asked, what do you do about it? That's what people have been asking ever since it began. Because it seems to be so complicated. People who have a lot of brain power haven't figured out, how do you handle this? Where do you start? What's the best way to go about doing something about it? I mean, the brainiest people in the world who have been sincere have approached it and walked away throwing up both hands. That means if a person really wants to be a superstar on this planet, figure out what to do about racism. I mean, some person who really wants, they pride themselves on what you call solving problems. You know, there are some people who walk around and say, hey, hand me a problem. I can solve any problem there is, because I know how to work on problems. Hand them the race problem. And see, in about maybe 6 months, they'll probably walk away talking to themselves. Now, these are people who are rocket scientists, all right? They think that they can figure out anything. Just give them the race problem. Tell them to figure that one out. Yeah.
Right on. You have some other questions you would like to ask Justice?
All right.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
How does the system of white supremacy harm non-white people directly and indirectly?
I didn't hear the question.
Hello?
How did what? Hello. How did what? I can hear you, but
okay. How does the
well, maybe I didn't understand the question. Go ahead. Say it again.
How does the system of white supremacy harm non-white people directly and indirectly?
Did you understand the question?
Yes, sir. I believe she said, how does the system of white supremacy harm non-white people directly and indirectly?
Oh, in every area of activity, because it's harmful. Now, it's one thing about the system of white supremacy. It's very efficient when it comes to producing things. It's the most productive system ever thought of in the history of recorded history for getting things done. You want to get things done, you can definitely adopt the system of white supremacy when it comes to handling material things. You can get a lot done through the system of white supremacy. You can get it done swiftly and efficiently. But that being the fact, the other part of it is, it's also designed in the process of getting things done, it's deliberately designed to destroy millions of people in the process. But you accomplish a lot. But it's a lot of dead people on the factory floor when you finish. And that's how it harms non-white people. They come under that onslaught. Now, a lot of non-white people, well, not a lot, but a few compared to the number that's dead on the factory floor, a few benefit. Just like in any slave system, which is basically what it is. The system of racism is just a form of slavery. That's all it is, based on color. You mistreat people. Any type of mistreatment is slavery. Anytime you're being mistreated, you're a slave. I don't care who you are or where you are. See, the word slavery has just been kind of confined to a certain ritual that you go through. No, mistreatment is slavery. If you are subject to any kind of mistreatment, you are a slave at the time that you are subject to that. And sometimes a person is just, a slave for 15 minutes because they're being mistreated for 15 minutes. And when the 15 minutes is over, they're no longer a slave. But if you're a non-white person on the planet under a system of white supremacy, you are a slave as long as you are under that system. And that's pretty awesome. So if a white person is being mistreated by another white person for, for 24 hours, it means that that white person was a slave for 24 hours. But after the 24 hours, they got away from the situation. They're not a slave anymore. But they can say, truthfully, that they were a slave for 24 hours. If you are kidnapped and beaten. Yes, go ahead.
I want to see the grade next time, okay?
Justice, did you have a question?
I want to see the grade next time, for real. And they're going to be all right?
I think that's the person that called in.
All right, don't knock on the door anymore. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that was the person that called in. Sorry about that. If you can continue with your response. Sorry about that, Mr. Fuller.
Yes, no problem. But I'm trying to, give examples and all like that, because in counter-racist codification, everything should be very clear for a very logical reason. Racist, if you're going to have a system of racism, one thing you have to do is not make things clear. You have to be confusing. You have to use confusing terms. You have to say one thing and do another. You have to be deceptive. Otherwise, you can't maintain the system except by brute force. And brute force has been proven on an ongoing basis with no break. Just simply doesn't work. The system will break down somewhere along the line. So if you want a smooth running system of mistreatment of any kind, you have to be a very deceitful person. Deception works on a long-term basis, because then you're not always arguing and fighting with people. They're on automatic. People who are deceived will be on automatic. They'll think that they're doing what they should be doing and going about doing it the way that it should be done because they're deceived, so they'll do it on their own. You don't have to watch them or beat them with a whip. You don't have to go looking for them to check on them. They'll just be on automatic because you have now, through deception, made them into robots. You don't have to watch a robot once it's been trained. It's like a dog. See, if you haven't trained your dog, you got to stay right there with that dog. Otherwise, the dog will break loose and this might do anything. But if you train the dog, now you can go to sleep because the dog will know exactly what to do. Go sit by the door and stay there until you tell it to move. It's the same way when you subject a person to slavery or to racism, which is just a form of slavery because it's mistreatment. You just train them to accept the mistreatment and actually think that the mistreatment is excellent treatment. Now you got it. You got a perfect situation.
Justice, do you have some more questions you would like to ask?
Not at this moment, thank you.
Okay. There's one person who called in. Caller, your line is showing up as 111. Did you have a question you would like to ask Mr. Fuller?
Yes, I apologize for earlier. I was actually trying to put the kids to bed, and I didn't want them to bother me while I was going to make the comment, and you recorded the whole thing. So
no problem.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the whole thing from the beginning, but I kind of came in when Mr. Fuller was talking about the whole gay, feminine men in history. And my name is the Gay Mentor. That's my show name on here. And I was just curious, his perspective of minority gay females or lesbians, or does he feel like, since they're females, it's kind of the opposite, that maybe Caucasian men or men in general heterosexual men might feel intimidated, or, is there an issue, or is it, do they get away with a little bit more? Do we get away with a little bit more because we are females, and maybe we, less people are intimidated by us? I was just, curious about your perspective on that. And then I also had another comment, but I didn't know if you wanted me to kind of question. I don't know if you want me to wait till you answer that one.
Could I ask if you're a white person or a non-white person?
I am half black, half Puerto Rican. My mom, she's, was a Black Panther when she was younger, natural afro, and just real down-to-earth person. And my dad, born in Puerto Rico, that type of thing.
You're non-white.
Right, non-white. But my
godmother... According to the white supremacists, you would be non-white.
Right, absolutely.
You'd be in the non-white category.
Yes. But
that's what they go by.
But once you answer this question, I was gonna tell you a little brief experience, and I wanted your comment on that.
All right. You have a brief experience of what kind?
Well, did you want to answer? Yeah, it's something totally different. It has to do with kind of like race relations. So I don't know if you want to address the.
Oh, okay. Well, no, I'll deal with the first. I'll deal with it like I will deal with it in the order that you want me to do it. So your first question was. Hello?
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
Please.
What
was our first question?
Was the question, do you think, Mr. Fuller, do you think that non-white females or so-called lesbian females, do you think they might get more privileges or get away with doing more than a non-white male, since the white supremacists might not consider a non-white female or a lesbian non-white female, they might not consider them to be as big a threat than a non-white male? Was that the question?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In some instances. See, it depends on what the white supremacists want to do. See, that's the part that has to be yet to be studied when this whole thing plays out. They have an agenda. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they wouldn't be spreading it all over Africa and whatnot.
No, I'm sorry. What did you mean?
The white supremacists are all. Hello, go ahead.
Okay, what were you talking about all over Africa? I was trying to get a perspective, like, how would you perceive my life? Would you feel like, I was, I have more privilege, like you were talking about some of the gay black men had more privilege in history than some of the other Caucasian men because they were less intimidating to the white supremacists. And I was asking, as a female, not a male, lesbian, minority, do you feel like possibly we might be the very, very bottom of the tier as far as subjected to all sorts of prejudice from all sorts of directions, from racism to, sexism to being gay and all that type of stuff? Or do you feel like we're not as intimidating as maybe some other groups?
Well, see, that's what I mean by evidence. See, we don't. You won't know that really, nor will I, until you actually experience pressure from whatever source. Okay? Then you will know, because that pressure will have come about because the white supremacists have determined that that's where it's going to come. See, they will make that decision if you are in the non-white category. All right? And it has been my observation that the white supremacists consider anyone who say that anybody in their family is black, that came before them. And because Puerto Rican is not a color. See, so what the white supremacists do...
I don't really... to be honest with you, I'll just get into my next point, so you probably get a better idea where I'm coming from. I was in the military, and I was stationed on a small ship that had a wide variety of people, people who weren't even American citizens on this boat and on the ship. And I would say ratio-wise, because, of course, there were far more Caucasians in there than, minorities or blacks or whatever, Asians. I would have to say in all honesty, that a lot of the minorities, ratio-wise, gave me more problems than a lot of the Caucasian people. Now, I'm not saying that a lot of those Caucasian people who didn't give me problems were not racist. You know, I can't label certain people, but what I'm saying is, wouldn't it be just wiser in life just to judge people as individuals, see how they treat you, and then you decide based off of their actions what type of person this person is, because you never know. I mean, there might be white people. I know there are. I'm sure racism will probably exist as long as I'm alive. But I believe there are white people who generally want to help other non-white people. I'm not saying depend on them. I'm just saying be aware of, you know, whatever your environment is and the type of people you're dealing with.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. What you are describing right now, like the ship that you were on and all like that, that's exactly the way that the white supremacists want it, because what you were describing is confusion.
I'm
and
not
as
going
a
to disagree
result,
with that.
Huh?
I'm not going to disagree with that.
You said you do disagree with that?
I will not disagree with that.
Oh, okay. Well, now, what you were looking at on that ship, because a ship is an excellent place. See, they experiment on ships.
Oh, listen,
you know,
I'm not going to disagree with that either. You should listen to one of my shows.
Yes, see, I mean, a ship is a ship is a laboratory for experience. The slave ships themselves were laboratories of experimentation. So by the time they got to land, they had already worked out how a lot of things are going to work, because they had a captive audience. They had a captive clientele. It's something about being isolated on the water.
Okay, but okay, and then I'll get to a general. I mean, your ideas are very interesting, and honestly, when you were talking about the whole gay men and certain positions, I didn't live during that time, but that sounds very interesting. But ultimately, despite all the horrific experiences I had while in the military, right now I am benefiting from that experience, and I don't feel like I'm experiencing racism through that system. But I feel like it's because I spent a lot of time doing a lot of research, and I don't know if it's true that I'm doing 10 times more than a white person next to me, but I know I spend a lot of time looking out for me. You know what I mean? And then I also look out for other people, but not like as a black or white thing. It's like as a veteran, as a gay person, as a black person, as an individual. You know what I mean? Like anybody who's with it. You know, I'm not out here to support hate. You know, when I joined the military, I didn't join the military because I wanted to bomb other countries. I mean, I was one of those people that were looking for benefits at a young age, and I got it. You know, I got it. And,
sure.
And so, you know what I mean? But and listen, I did experience racism and sexism and more than that there, okay? And I'm not denying that. And I'm not saying that, and I do, like you said, experiment. Yes, I felt that way. I felt like the ship was like a small world experiment, you know what I mean? Like just everybody put in that little boat of experimenting on society. But
Now, hold it right there. Hold it right there. If you could perceive that at a subliminal level,
at 18 through 22, yes.
That's what I'm saying. The white supremacists didn't discover this. The white supremacists set it up because that's what they were doing. They are experimenting to see what people will. They have done this as far back as the beginning of racism.
But do you
they know what kind of setups they can have where they can steer people into thinking whichever way they want people to think. They are masters at this. These are not things that happen by accident. That's what I'm saying. They know that under certain conditions, a ghetto, for instance, or a shanty town, or a ship, that you can do certain things. And then you can watch people in all types of environment. And you can actually steer them in such a way they don't even know they're being steered.
No, that's very interesting too. And I do believe that to a certain extent. Yet I don't really think it was
master psychologist.
I don't really
nobody
think it
that
was,
tops him at it.
Well, no, I mean, honestly, through my observation, I didn't think it was necessarily so much. So I believe there was systematic racism and all that type of stuff like you're talking about. Yes, we agree on that. But also to a certain level, everyone had to take responsibility for their actions. You know, like I knew if I stayed in there, I was going to have to be a different person than I wanted to be, okay? Or it was going to be very difficult for me. Some people can be cool, but it's very difficult for them. But they feel like that's their only option, perhaps. But if everyone takes, because no matter what they did to me, I took responsibility for my action. I did not let them manipulate me. And yes, I had to deal with, you know, instead of being the, you know, I mean, I was big time at one point. Towards the end, when they realized I was really getting out, I was very serious about what I felt about the military. Because a lot of people in the Navy, they're like, fuck this, fuck that. And that's all of them. But they stay in, and that's not just black people. I mean, a lot of black people get out. You know, that's all types of people. So if there's a racism or a systematic system going on, you know, they're all experiencing it to a certain extent.
Yes, but I have this question.
Yes.
At what point in your existence on the planet did you take what you started saying, responsibility, and that you no longer were being manipulated? Because
honestly, to be honest with you, from day one, but I think they thought I was a teenager, and you know, they just had to, you know, praise me and give me everything that someone would want. And, you know, I mean, not saying I didn't earn these things. You know, I took these tests, and, you know, I showed up one time, and I did what I was supposed to do responsibly. But, you know, I mean, I was, you know, all these awards, and then it's like, oh, you really are getting out. You really did just use this GI Bill and got, you know, getting the fuck out, you know, and not looking back.
I understand that, but here's what I'm saying. Under the system of racism, because, see, it's a world system.
But do you understand what I'm telling you, too? The black people were the same way. I mean, I was in...
I understand this. I want you to listen to me for a minute. I understand all of that. And that's a part of the system.
Who are you trying to blame? Are you trying to blame the white people for manipulating the black people to be racist against me?
No, I'm telling you. I'm telling you what the perspective of the codification. The white supremacists, like the captain of a ship. Now, you said that you were on a ship. Now, there's one thing that I've always been taught about a ship, whether it's the Titanic or the Forrestal. The captain is to blame for everything that happens on that ship that doesn't supposed to happen. Now, haven't you been taught that? In the Navy, I think you would definitely be taught that.
Well, I didn't need to be taught that. I observed 3 different captains, and I saw how the system worked under different commands.
I mean, you know, in the old days, they used...
I can observe that myself. I don't need someone to tell me.
Okay, well, I'm just saying this. Okay, now, here's what. Just bear with me for a minute. The entire planet is a ship. And the people who believe in the practice of white supremacy are running the entire ship. Now, that's the premise. Now, that's either true or false. The white people on this planet, not all, but just the white people who believe in white supremacy, they run the planet, period, of all of the business of the people who are classified as non-white. And those people conduct themselves the way that the people who run the planet wanted them conducted. If I board a ship and all the sailors are drunk, I don't bother with the sailors. Anybody who has ever inspected a ship will tell you this. They don't run up and down the deck trying to collar every sailor on that Forrestal, on that aircraft carrier, and barking at them. No. When they're inspecting that vessel and they find the sailors drunk on that vessel, they go straight to the captain's cabin. Now, the captain of the ship that we call the planet is run by people who believe in and who practice white supremacy. That's the concept. So if you're going to blame someone for anybody, because see,
I'm not blaming anyone. That's what I don't understand.
The people on the planet are all messed up.
No,
okay,
no,
wait a minute. Let me finish.
This is my whole thing. This is my thing.
Okay.
Mr.
All
Fuller,
right.
Mr. Fuller, you, just you
Yes,
as an
ma'am.
individual, you. Are you happy in your life?
Absolutely not.
Okay, and see,
Because
that's the
I'm not supposed
difference.
to be.
That's the difference, sir. I am, as some people in this chat room describe me, and I'm sure these people are black. I know they are, and very, not politically correct terms describing my ethnicity, which is unfortunate, and this just proves my point right here. And they think I'm lost, but they're proving my point right here in the chat room. But that's fine. I don't care what you want to call it. Okay.
Oh, you're not supposed
but
to if you don't have a problem.
No. Sir, let me just finish my point. My point is that despite this racism that exists in society, I'm saying I am happy in my life. And I don't I socialize with anyone. I don't care what race you are, because I know there are good white people. I know there are good black people. I know there are bad people of all different races. And I've always been like that. Even it was way before the military.
But you say that. Well, wait a minute. You say something else though. You say that you're a female and that you're gay, correct?
Yes, I am.
Now,
which should be another shot against me, right? I should be angry.
No.
Right? I should be like, oh my God, I can't have these benefits, and I'm not that way.
According to the code, that means that the white supremacists have done their job.
All right. Well, hey, their job works for me. Well, thank you, white supremacists.
Yes, that's the very point. And you say that you're. Wait a minute, hold it. And you say that you're happy.
I am, and that's the truth. I'm happy.
Absolutely, and that fits the old-fashioned description of gay. Now.
There you go. Hey, check out my homepage.
Yeah, you're gay and you're happy. Wait a minute.
Now,
let's look at it. That's the very point. The first part of the discussion this evening was just about the effect that the white supremacists want to have on what they consider to be non-white people. And that was my premise in the beginning.
Okay,
now,
I missed the beginning.
It's nothing better. It's nothing better than a happy person that the white supremacists have manipulated into being happy.
Why does it have to be white supremacists? Why can't it just be fighting for what you believe in? Why does it have to always be race when I'm saying individuals?
Well, in other words,
is Clarence Thomas, am I supposed to relate to him or something?
Well, wait a minute, say that again.
Am I supposed to be able to relate to Clarence Thomas? You want me to repeat myself?
Ask the question so that I'll know what the question is.
Am I supposed to be able to relate to Clarence Thomas?
Relate to him how? You're supposed to be able to relate.
Well, I mean, if you're listening to what I'm saying in a row, I'm saying, am I supposed to automatically assume that I am to get along or be able to relate to every black person, or assume that every black person is for my best interest? Or should I assume that a black person over a white person is in my best interest just because that person is black?
That's what I mean by asking one question at a time and answering that question. Okay. In answer to the first question, no, under this system, the way it's set up, you're not supposed to be able to relate to anybody in a constructive fashion, except the white supremacists when they want you to do it. Okay? So you got to think about what is their objective, because whether anyone realizes it or not, which just shows how good they are, they want to have absolute control without the person knowing that they are being controlled. That's the perfect situation, so that the person thinks that, what I'm doing is just the things that I want to do.
Do you think you're not being controlled?
Let me say this.
You are being controlled.
Let me say this about the way the white supremacists operate, because many people think this. The Indians thought that. I'm in control.
No,
They're sitting
I'm
up here as drunk
asking
as
you,
they
do
can
you
be.
think you're in control because you're making it seem like you have more control because you're able to think past the white supremacist game plan? And what I'm saying is, what makes you think you have more control or more freedom than I do? Perhaps, and I don't know for a fact, but perhaps I might have more freedoms than you do.
See, but that's another thing
And
that
that's
the white
the
supremacists
fact.
do. Wait a minute. Let's
And
hold it
this
just
reality, not the reality somewhere on Red Planet, whatever these people are from in this chat room.
Well, let me
but
answer
on
the
this
questions
planet,
as we go along. I'm not saying that you don't have anything. I'm saying what counter-racist logic says, because I'm dealing with racism. Now, I'm also saying something else, which you have said to me, and I'll just repeat it. You said you really got no problem with because you have figured out a way to be happy.
I did not say I don't have more problems. I said that perhaps
what
my
did you
situation
say? You said you were happy.
is a little bit more. I did say I'm happy, and you said you were unhappy. I said perhaps my situation, not knowing you personally, but knowing my situation, perhaps I have more freedoms. And I don't want to get into the details because I will assume that you understand what I mean by freedoms or freedom, benefits or whatever you want to talk about, than you.
No problem. But see, here's what. That's exactly what I mean by the system of white supremacy. And one thing I want to definitely make clear. Wait a minute.
Right.
Hold it. I'm trying to make something.
My situation is better than a lot of
I
white
know,
people.
but you're trying to. How are the white
people controlling?
Wait a minute. But see, we think. See, there's anxiety here, and this is exactly what is supposed to be avoided. We are trying to even talk over each other. This is exactly what happens under the system of white supremacy, and neither one of us are white supremacists. That's number one.
Absolutely.
Because I know you're not a white supremacist if you're considered to be non-white.
Absolutely.
All right, because you can't be.
That's
you got to be white
to make
to be a
the
white
point to you as a non-white person. That's telling
I
you.
know
my
that, but here's what.
But see,
And you might
Hold
have
on a
this
second, ma'am. Hold on a second,
lady,
ma'am.
I have to,
Thank you.
I have to explain something very important as to what's going on right here. The very fact that we have this high-pitched conversation means that the system is working exactly the way they want it. Because, see, now, I talk to white people. It's a white lady that calls me every day or every other day and has been doing it for years. We don't get into this. And you know why?
Well, good. I'm glad you're socializing with white people.
Wait a minute. No. Wait, hold it. You see, you're doing it again.
She's not controlling you like the
Hold on a second, ma'am.
See, the anxiety is there. The anxiety is there. You can see it. You can't even wait for me to explain something because the anxiety is there.
You keep saying certain things that really don't connect. I don't get your point.
But you are saying it as if you...
And I'm asking you questions because at one point your concept seemed maybe a little unique, but maybe I haven't been paying attention to all the other shows that these people from the chat room are, because maybe this... honestly, I think that... this show is very interesting. I do, I think I enjoy the host.
But I got a question.
I like the way it goes. But in all honesty, I understand your point. I've heard, you don't know my background, so I've heard everything you have to say before, unfortunately. But I do wish you the best, and much love to the people in the chat room who don't understand what I'm talking about. Much love.
Thank you. I find that very interesting. I want you to finish your point that you wanted to make with the caller, but I also want to reiterate.
Yes, well, what happened? What has been happening between me and the caller has been exactly what's not supposed to happen. See what I mean? Mm-hmm. But every time it is this way. See, I was on a program the other night. Same thing. See, because the white supremacist has it set up so that this is a guarantee. See, the very fact that she feels even interested enough to have these conversations, all right, and then have this kind of anxiety while she's having it, that is exactly what the white supremacists want. And this is why I say the code says, hey, if you're going to have an argument, you don't have arguments about race with no other black person ever, or no other non-white person. It's never supposed to happen. All arguments are supposed to be between white and non-white. All, without exception. Never. See what I mean?
Yes, sir.
But see, because it's going to be automatic when it's white. I mean, when it's non-white with non-white.
That I think it is fabulous that you were able to demonstrate that in the caller. Thank you for calling in, for demonstrating that. I wanted to remind our listeners, most of these programs, and I believe this is about the 40th program that I have done addressing racism, white supremacy, most of my programs I have white people on. In fact, we have a white professor from the University of Southern California. She's coming on in less than 30 minutes to talk about white supremacy. And I generally never have that much interrupting, that much anxiety, tension in the conversations I have with white people. Even if we do not agree, I've had Tim Wise on the show, and we didn't agree about very much of anything. He's not a fan of mine. I'm not a fan of his. But we did not have nearly as much tension, yelling, interrupting in the conversation. It was smooth. The person would allow you to make your statement, voice where they didn't agree, no yelling, no voices raised, no interruptions. Very stark contrast in most of the conversations I observe between non-white people and other non-white people about racism. It ends up being arguments and complaints and just not constructive communication. So I'm very thankful that you pointed that out. And if you could you finish your statement about your thoughts that she said she was gay and she said she was happy, and you felt that was by white supremacist design. If you could perhaps maybe wrap up, and if you could explain that thoroughly for us so we all get an understanding.
I mean, you know, once you get the non-white person in a state of mind and a viewpoint of life, of what life should be about for them, you know, as a victim, I mean, there's an old adage, I mean, there's nothing better than having a happy slave. That's a perfect situation. A slave that's walking around grumpy all the time, man, is dangerous. I mean, and any slave master going all the way back through history, I mean, will tell you whether, you know, you're talking about the Roman Empire or you're talking about a plantation slave owner in Louisiana. They will sell a grumpy slave down the river first time they get a sale. And then one thing they don't want the rumor to get out. Now, this slave is always grumpy, always complaining about everything. Don't like nothing. Don't like the food, don't like the plantation. Can't stand the master. But the slave that's playing that banjo and kicking up his heels and think he's in heaven, that's the one we want to keep. A grumpy slave might slip up behind you any dark night with an axe.
Well, I assume our caller, it seemed like from what she was saying on the phone, she doesn't think white supremacy is that much of a problem. She said she was happy. I assume white supremacy.
And another thing, I just want to interject this. That was very important, but she wouldn't let me get that word in. If she's already happy with the way everything is, then why bother with having these kind of conversations at all? See what I mean?
Yes, sir.
I wrote my book only for people who say that they are victims. It says right on the cover. I've run into dozens of people who say, I'm not a victim. I say, well, then the book is not for you. If racism doesn't affect you, that you don't have no problem with it or nothing like that, it's nothing in this book for you. And in fact, the only suggestion I have for you is to teach other people how you were able to pull it off. You're a black person and you've never been victimized by racism, and if you were victimized, you came up with a way of dealing with it that really worked for you. I said you should do, you know, what the code says that every person should do to find themselves in that golden position. Teach other people exactly how you did it, all the steps that you took. And I said, and you can start with me.
If being so-called homosexual is a part of that process, I think I'm going to have to pass and find
No, I'm going to pass on that part.
Yeah,
see what I
me
mean?
too.
Because that's
Me
a
too.
part of the racist conspiracy. I've already decided that. See, so if they come to me, well, Fuller, if you really don't want to deal with racism and be happy and get all kind of benefits, which he mentioned benefits,
yes,
and all like
sir.
that, and go on and live your life, then, Fuller, you got to become a homosexual. And then I say, no, because that's a part of their plot. That's not a part of mine. You know, no, I'm not doing that. You know, yeah, I know about the benefits that go with that. I've seen it. But are they really benefits? You know, what does it, and I have this written in some of my notes, what does it matter to gain the whole world and have to give up your gender?
As I said, we have a suspected white supremacist. She's going to be coming on the program in about 20 minutes to talk about her book. Her name is Arela Gross. She's a professor at the University of Southern California. Could you please share with our audience how they can get a copy of your book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept?
Oh, they can just call me by telephone, and I'll give them the price and send it to them.
Okay.
You know, price is $15.
Okay.
And 202-484-5461. I got about 6 copies left, and then I can have to direct them to African World Books over in Baltimore and see if they can get it from them. That's African World Books at 2217 Pennsylvania Avenue. 2217 Pennsylvania Avenue, Baltimore, Maryland. That's temporarily. Then the reason for this, I got about 6 books left myself. I'm just about run out. But I'll have more coming in after the 20th of this month.
Okay.
20th of October, right. But right now, I got about 6 copies left. So 202-484-5461. That's my phone number, what I'm talking to right now.
Outstanding. I also want to let people know his book is linked. If you're listening from Blog Talk Radio, his book, you can click on the picture, and if you try to get it directly from Mr. Fuller, please do that first. If you try to get it from him and he's out, if you're looking for other routes to get the book as soon as possible, I think you can click that picture, and it'll take you to Amazon.com, and you can purchase it there as well. So just click the picture. If you try to call Mr. Fuller, if he's out of those 6, then that's another way you can get it if you want to try and get it as soon as possible. I definitely want to thank you for taking time out of your evening to speak with us. Very constructive. I'm thankful that the caller, she called in because I felt that was a brilliant demonstration of exactly what we talked about. She said she was happy and gay. I am not happy. I am not gay. I am a victim of white supremacy, and if doing so-called homosexual activity, if that's the only option that the racists are willing to present me of how I can be happy, I'm going to have to pass and think of something else. If you'd like to close out with anything, Mr. Fuller, please say anything you'd like to before we get ready to close this program out.
Okay, I just want to say that the compensatory code is different in a lot of other approaches. See, I'm not looking for a consensus. I just put out information like I did with everybody before the lady called in. You know, and the book is for victims of racism, people who want to do something about racism. If a person, even if a person doesn't consider themselves a victim, or even if the person does consider him or herself a victim, but they just don't like what I present in my book, they don't have to. It's not dictatorial. It's just a book of suggestions. Because there are no experts on racism except the racists themselves. So I'm just one of the people out here who's trying to come up with formulas for replacing it with a system of justice. And a person can use some of the formulas or not. It's all optional. It's not dictatorial at all. You're not looking for consensus like an organization. The compensatory code is not an organization. It's just a means of trying toward an end. Now, some people say, well, racism doesn't bother them, so it's only for people who racism bothers. That's all that it's for. It's not for people who are not interested. Many people have told me, I have no interest in that. And I read your book, and there's nothing in it that will help me do anything. I don't need it. And I say, well, we don't have any argument there. I'm not looking for an argument. It's only for people who think that they need something or that they can use something that's in it, like an auto mechanics book.
Right.
You know, if you don't drive a car, you're not interested in cars, you don't own a car, you're not working on cars or nothing like that, why study a book on cars? You know? Yeah, it's as simple as that. You go into a bookstore, you pick up the books that you need. If you are not into gardening, growing asparagus, and you never will be, why pick up a book on asparagus? It's just that simple.
I feel the exact same way. Justice, did you have a question before we let Mr. Fuller go?
No, but thank you very much for the information.
And thank you. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 10.
You're 10?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that is kind of young to be seeking information of the type that I'm putting out. But it's never too young to start. And like I say, you don't have to agree with any part of anything that anybody says. In fact, I would advise you not to agree. But just listen, and then listen to other people. And after you have listened to as many people as you can possibly listen to, make up your own mind. And I'd like to leave that with everybody. Always don't let anybody, make up your mind for you about serious issues. Because for a very logical reason, people make too many mistakes. Always follow logic. The logic that you get from listening to everybody, and then out of everything that's said, try to find out what the truth is and what's the best way to go. Don't give that up. Don't ever give that up. And that's my final word.
Outstanding. Thank you. I thoroughly appreciate it. It is always a privilege to be able to speak with you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you for sharing some of your time with us this Thursday evening. And I will definitely be in touch. Hopefully we can have you on the program again to share constructive suggestions for what we can do to replace white supremacy with justice.
All right, sir, and thanks again for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you. I will talk with you soon, sir.
Good night.
Warm up. Got an extra episode of The C.O.W.S. with Mr. Fuller. And we are coming right back, 15 minutes. We'll be right back with Rilla Rose to talk about her book, What Blood Won't Tell. Lots of constructive information for a gloomy Thursday, October 1st. I don't know where you are in Seattle. It's rainy and cloudy. Summer is gone. Yeah, that's what it is. We will be right back. I wholeheartedly agree with Mr. Fuller's suggestions, and that's how I feel about the cows as well. This program is specifically engineered for victims of white supremacy, non-white people. If you are non-white and you don't think racism is a problem, white people do right by you, this is not your show. This is not set up to argue. This is not set up to gripe. This is just, non-white people who feel that they're mistreated, that people practice racism, white supremacy against them. This program is designed for them to tune in and maybe hear information that will help them understand the problems they face as a victim of white supremacy and perhaps